Hello everybody, my name is Brian Conant. I am the director of the Los Padres Forest Association. Hope you're having a nice day wherever you happen to be. Here at the LPFA, we've been trying to do a series of YouTube interviews where we talk to some of the historic figures from across the forest and some of the current movers and shakers as well. Try to get their story, some information about what they have going on, and at the same point in time, document the history of the Los Padres Forest. So we're very honored this latest episode to have Supervisor Chris Stubbs, and he talks about what his involvement is with the Los Padres National Forest and some of the inner workings of the Forest Service. I think you'll enjoy it. Stay tuned. Here you go. My name is Brian Conant. I work with the Los Padres Forest Association, and we're very honored today to have Supervisor Chris Stubbs, Los Padres' new supervisor, on the Zoom call with us, and we're going to ask him some questions. Thanks, Chris, for making the time and giving us some of your time today.
Thanks, Brian. I'm happy to be here.
First off, I guess my first question is when I go around the forest and I talk to just the average Joe, they call everyone that works for the Forest Service a ranger. That seems to be the term that kind of goes for all Forest Service staff. You are the supervisor. What is your role? What exactly is the supervisor in charge of?
So I'm leading the forest, and that's about 275 permanent employees, and at peak fire season, and at least another 100 seasonal employees. So I'm the executive leader for the Los Padres National Forest, which is, as your readers and listeners know, we're almost 2 million acres here on the in Central and Southern California, and my superlative I like to say is we're bigger than Delaware. We're bigger than the state of Delaware.
Yeah, I think it's the second largest forest in California. Is that correct?
Oh, good question. I don't know. Here's another superlative for you, though. We're the only forest in California that has beachfront property.
Yeah, I like to tell people that the Los Padres, it's basically 9,000 feet to sea level. You kind of have everything in between, from Pinos to Pfeiffer Beach. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a special place.
Mm-hmm. And how long have you been? So before supervisor, you were, what was your title before you were the supervisor?
Before I was the forest supervisor, I was the deputy forest supervisor, so the number 2 person on the forest. And then my boss, the previous forest supervisor, Kevin Elliott, he retired last fall, and I was honored to be asked to be the next forest supervisor.
Mm-hmm. And are you from California? Is this your beginning home, or?
I'm not. I have family here in California. My mother-in-law lives in Morro Bay, and I previously worked for the Park Service, Brian, and so I've been employed in California before for the Mojave National Preserve down in Southern California in the desert.
Okay. And so how did you end up with the Los Padres? Was that just a job announcement that looked attractive to you, or did you get steered in that direction?
Well, so I'm glad you asked me that. My career spans 3 land management agencies. Managing land has always been my passion, and honestly, managing the big swaths of Western land, the wildlands and the wilderness in the West, it is my true passion. So I started with the Bureau of Land Management, and then I worked for the National Park Service at five different national park units. Most recently, I was the superintendent of the Monocacy National Battlefield in Frederick, Maryland. But when I saw the deputy job come open here, it was attractive to me because it gets me back to those big Western lands, and because we have family out here about an hour away. And having been here for a while, I've fallen deeper and deeper in love with it. I think you guys are stuck with me.
Good. That's a good problem to have for us, for sure.
Yeah.
And in your background, I know a lot of Forest Service staff, they come from law enforcement or recreation. What is your background? It sounds like land management. Is that kind of where you're?
So I have a master's degree in outdoor recreation planning, and my background is planning and recreation and NEPA, the National Environmental Policy Act, which you probably have heard a lot about.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay, and I've met you a few times on the trail. I think that's kind of exciting for me, a trails guy, and I like to get out and explore the forest. And it's really neat to see Forest Service staff and the supervisor, the head honcho, enjoying the trails. That's pretty cool. And I'm sure for your job, you get to go all across the forest. Is there any particular places that are your favorites? You know, you don't want to give away secret spots, but any places that really you enjoy going and visiting?
My favorite Santa Barbara front country trail, so can get to in 10 minutes in my car, is the San Ysidro Trail.
Mm-hmm.
And going a little further afield, anything along Manzana Creek in the San Rafael Wilderness. And indeed, I do enjoy being out on the trail. That's another reason I'm here is I like to play outdoors, whether that's in a boat or hiking or backpacking or rock climbing or biking. I want to be outdoors, and there's no place better in the world to do outdoor stuff than in our national forests.
Mm-hmm.
I'm as sure of that as I am that the sun will come up tomorrow morning.
Nice. And you're based out of Santa Barbara. The supervisor's office is in Solvang. So you're based out of Santa Barbara and then going over the hill when you can.
Yeah, that's correct. We're here in the West Side neighborhood in Santa Barbara, and I commute to the supervisor's office. We've got a new office, and we opened it up during the pandemic, so it's not sort of fully ready, but we'd like to have an open house for the public once we get it ready.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've been there. It's a really nice building. It's a big upgrade from what you guys had in Goleta, the last place in Goleta.
Indeed.
So. And then, I've been working with the forest now for 20 years or so in some capacity as a volunteer or with the LPFA. So I've worked with a few different supervisors. I know I would assume right now a big time for you is to work on the program of work, the annual program of work, which I believe it's based on the fiscal year. So it's going to be released or announced on October 1st. So are you guys really busy right now? All the districts kind of putting together what the priorities will be for the forest over the coming year?
Well, yes and no. So we have 4 main priorities that aren't going to change.
Mm-hmm.
So we're not busy rewriting those. And I want to make sure our partners and our volunteers and the public understands they can expect some consistency from us. And so let's make sure everyone knows what those priorities are, okay? And not in order of importance, but certainly important is maintaining our fire response suppression capacity. That's absolutely a priority and always will be. We're having some challenges there, but we're hoping that the recent supplemental pay for firefighters will help with that. The second one, Brian, is maintaining and improving recreational access. And that's where trails come in. And that's a lot of where you and LPFA comes in, and a lot of our other partners. And recreational access is our trails and our roads and our facilities and our infrastructure. And can you get where you want to go in the forest to spend time out there, either by yourself or with your friends and your family?
Mm-hmm.
It's very important to me, and I feel passionate about it. The next is maintaining healthy forests through our fuels program. And if we have time, I'll tell you more about that, but essentially bringing our fuels to a level where we've got a forest that is resistant to catastrophic wildfires. And then the last big priority is managing our special use program. And special uses are anything on the forest that's not that traditional recreation that you're thinking about. So when you sit here in Goleta or Santa Barbara and look up on the mountain and see those communication towers, that's a special use permit. They look up there and see the power lines, the SCE and PG&E, they have special use permits from us. Any water developments or road rights of way, those are special use permits. So our national forests play an important role where they provide uses other than just recreation. So sorry to ramble, but the answer to your question is under each of those main priorities, then we have projects, okay? And yes, indeed, we are looking at those projects and what they'll look like in FY23.
Okay. Yeah, I know I'm just kind of off the top of my head, one of the big projects completed this last year were the 2 bridges on the, headed towards Naira going down Sunset Valley. And hopefully there'll be more projects like that. Maybe repaving. Can I kind of throw in a few suggestions? Repaving Sunset Valley would be really nice.
Yeah, we're hoping to get funding to improve that road. I can't make any promises because everybody's competing for that kind of funding, but it's on my radar indeed. And we were pleased to get those 2 bridges done. And for your viewers, the idea here is we removed barriers to upstream fish passage and took out low water crossings where the fish couldn't get past them and put in bridges where they now can.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we just need some water now to help the fish along.
No doubt.
Drying up quickly out there right now.
Yes, it is.
Mm-hmm. That kind of segues into the next question I have, and this sort of goes with the first forest priority, wildfire that you mentioned. There's been a lot of talk across the forest of campfire bans or people having illegal fire rings, things of that nature. I know here above Santa Barbara, now it's illegal to have a fire in the front country of Santa Barbara year round. We also have the fire restrictions that are in place right now and probably going to ramp up. And then over the last 2 years, we've had, I think September has been closed to the forest the last 2 years due to fire concerns. Is that your decision to make those decisions or the big closures, or is that something that gets kind of funneled down to you from elsewhere?
In terms of there's three parts to that question. Okay.
Yep.
And one is the campfire ban on the Santa Barbara front country. That was indeed my decision. And when you have that much proximity to development and no designated campsites or campgrounds, it makes sense for us, for safety reasons, to not allow campfires. In terms of the seasonal restrictions, we're currently in a moderate level of restrictions where folks can't have campfires in the backcountry, but they can still use stoves and they can still have campfires in designated sites. Mm-hmm. We tend to ramp up those restrictions as our fuel moisture drops and fire danger increases, and that's also my decision. Then the third thing that you referenced was the forest-wide closures, and that's a new thing in California, and it has indeed occurred late summer last 2 years, and that's not my decision. That's my boss, Jen Eberlein, the regional forester, and that decision is not made lightly, and we're not happy when it has to be made. But it's for the safety of our visitors and for the people that live on the edges of the forest. I personally hope we don't have to go there again this year, but I will indeed support it, of course, if we have to. Right.
Knock on wood. I know a lot of the hunters for A zone, that's their time is August. And I think they've been, shorted the last 2 years of the hunting season because of the closures. I know we get quite a few emails from them, chatting about this and that related to the A zone hunting. So I'm sure they would be happy as well if it stayed open for a year, but I understand that's not your decision.
I get those emails too, and I feel bad for the hunters if I know people plan their vacations around trips to the forest. It's not just hunting. I am a backpacker, and I'm going backpacking in August up on the Inyo, and if I can't go, I'm going to be sad. That's going to be frustrating. Yep.
Right. Another hot topic is the fuels reduction. You touched on that a little bit too with the forest priorities. I think that probably the most popular or known one is Pine Mountain or the Reyes Peak fuel reduction project. My opinion on that is I feel like what you see in the media is their science is saying that the best way to protect Pine Mountain would be to leave it alone and let nature do its thing. If you hear the Forest Service side of things, their science is saying that actually some sort of a management plan or fuels reduction is the best way to protect that part of the forest. I feel like both sides want the same thing. It's just a difference of opinion on science. I don't feel like that always gets relayed correctly, but do you kind of see it that way as well?
Well, I see it the way my agency does, which is we have an overwhelming weight of evidence to suggest that we need to reduce the fuel load in our forests or we're going to lose our forests. And there's a lot of science behind that. So what's happened this past winter is the Forest Service has rolled out its wildfire crisis strategy. And that's a 10-year strategy for confronting these ever increasing wildfires that we're having. And let there be no doubt we are in a crisis. Okay, so here's three things to consider. We have historic fuels accumulation from 100 years of aggressively putting out fires. Okay, and the data supports that. And fuels are the understory and dead and decadent trees that have built up since we started modern fire suppression. The second thing is the climate's changing. If you have any doubt about that, just look at the size of these fires we're having. Okay, the planet's warming up. We're having more severe wind events. That causes larger wildfires. In 2017, the Thomas Fire, and Brian, you lived through that.
Oh yeah.
People are still scarred from that. Okay. I mean, PTSD. The Thomas Fire was the largest wildfire in California history 4 years ago. It's now number 8. 4 short years later. That's pretty scary. Some people say these large wildfires are the canary in the coal mine for climate. I don't think so. I think the canary is dead and the mine is filling with smoke and dust. Okay. And then we have more and more development in the wildland-urban interface. Those folks who live on the edge of the forest are actually in the forest. So those 3 things, historic fuels accumulation, climate change, and more development in what we call the WUI, the wildland-urban interface. And so our response to that is to reduce the fuels through various fuels treatments. And yes, sometimes that involves chainsaws and removing some trees and other vegetation. The infrastructure bill is funding this to the tune of billions of dollars, and we're working with multiple partners on these projects. We want to create fire-adapted and fire-safe human communities, and we want to create healthy, resilient forests. And if we do nothing, we're going to lose these forests. And since you mentioned Reyes Peak, that's a great example. Our concern is we're going to have a stand replacing wildfire. And by that, what I want your viewers to understand is, or your readers or your listeners, is if we get fire up in the crowns of those trees and kill those trees, that forest may not come back. We want to keep that from happening by thinning it out a little bit. So our goal is a healthy forest. And our goal is to keep your house from burning down. And if we do nothing, we're going to have a problem.
Yeah, I've seen, I've traveled many parts of the forest and seen some areas that burned in the Zaka fire in particular, also the Day fire. And there are sort of similar areas to Reyes Peak that have burned pretty hot and aren't really coming back now 15 years later. And so I think everybody agrees that protecting those areas like Reyes Peak, Pine Mountain is a priority. So
Well, I certainly want to protect it, and I think it's beautiful up there. It's an incredible place, and I love hiking up there.
Yeah, it's nice this time of year. You know, a lot of the forest is hot, and unfortunately, we don't have a ton of water. So those higher elevation places with shade are kind of some of the last spots that you can go to in the summertime without dying.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Indeed.
Kind of moving on to the next question. This is going to be sort of like resource damage. I know, you know, I try to pay attention to everything that's going on across the forest. Big Sur has a lot of resource damage going on with four-wheel drives going off trail, camping in places they shouldn't be camping. Just this past week, we had some motorcycles go down into the Sisquoc, and you know, had to get rescued there by search and rescued. And I don't know if you saw that or not, but there seems to be a lot of damage resource. One thing that I saw from a few months ago or weeks ago maybe is that the Forest Service is hiring a bunch of new staff and employees. And one of the theories with this resource damage is that when the cat's away, the mice come out and play. And by not having Forest Service staff, you know, a lot of people feel free to go wherever they want. So I guess a lot of us are hoping that with additional Forest Service staff, that some of these issues, the resource damage, will go away. How are you doing with regards to hiring all these new staff that we hear about?
You know, so often in my federal career, we've been talking about doing more with less, and we've been in a period of shrinkage, right? Well, here we are right now, and we're in a period of growth, which is a great thing. So we are working on hiring. There's a mass hiring event, meaning the Forest Service is hiring a group of recreation specialists, and we're hoping some of them will come to us. That process is ongoing. The challenge here is how expensive it is to live in Central California. That said, we're hoping to attract some quality candidates, and the rec folks actually absolutely will be on the ground with eyes and ears for exactly the kind of resource damage that you're talking about. I did hear about the one in the Sisquoc drainage, and it's being investigated, so I can't say a lot, but I want to be clear to your members and your viewers that there's no place for motorized equipment in wilderness, and we will seek you out if you bring a motor into the wilderness. That is not okay, and we absolutely have to protect wilderness values. And outside of wilderness too, okay? The motorcycles and the four-wheelers will run us to death if they don't follow the rules. So like anyone, they need to follow the rules, and we need to follow up if they don't.
I guess that includes intentionally crashing a plane in the wilderness, like we saw. I think it was that last year.
Yeah, I'll try not to get too salty about this, but if that plane had crashed into me and my family, I would have haunted that guy till the end of time.
Yeah.
On the list of irresponsible things, that's probably number one, because you could have hurt someone, or he could have started a fire.
Mm-hmm.
And the video would be funny if it weren't sad.
Right.
And there's another one that's under investigation, and law enforcement is following up.
Yeah, I think that was November, before the rain. So that could have started a fire for sure.
Absolutely. And I'm sorry, you don't have 3 or 4 GoPros posted around your airplane,
Mm-hmm.
And then try to claim you weren't intentional about crashing it.
Yeah, well, it worked for him. I think he was looking for publicity, and it worked. But yeah, certainly hope that doesn't happen again.
Yeah, no kidding. I hope it's not a trend.
Mm-hmm. One other great thing about the Los Padres is this is really the only forest I know. I've been in other forests, of course, but I've never worked with forest staff from other forests. But when detailed employees come here from the Forest Service, they're always marvel at all the volunteer work being up and down the forest. VWA, like say LPFA is doing that too. And yeah, is that something that is sort of special in your opinion as well to this forest? It seems like I said, everybody that comes here can't believe how much work gets done by the volunteer groups.
Well, let me be clear. Our volunteers are special. Now, this is the only forest I've ever worked for, so I don't have a lens of comparison, but we could not function as a forest if it weren't for our volunteers and our partners. And I can't say enough about them, the people who donate their time. And we've got people like Mike Hurd, who he's functioning like an employee. And he's donating his time. The volunteer crews that work for VWA and LPFA and the folks that are cleaning up the old shooting sites that Forest Watch is bringing them up there to clean up. Montecito Trails Foundation. The problem, Keeps SB Wild. The problem with me listing these groups, Brian, is I'll miss someone. Okay, so if you're in one of these groups and I didn't mention you, believe me, I appreciate you as well. We need you. We need your support. We need your help. We need your political support too. I need you to raise your hand and say, hey, we love that place. If bad stuff ever happens. And since you opened the door to it, Brian, our partners as well, the ones we have agreements with, we have an active and complex partner landscape on this forest, and we really care about all our partners. We have agreements with firefighting agencies. We've got a partner who runs our campgrounds and rec sites. We've got a robust partnership with you to manage with the Forest Association to manage 2 of our visitor centers. So these volunteers and partnerships are in the same part of my brain. Other people who help us out, and we couldn't do it without all of them. And if you're out there listening and you're a volunteer or a partner, thank you. We're a partnership forest. The Los Padres is a partnership forest and a volunteer forest.
And a hot forest right now. So anything else? We have our forest priorities. Is there anything that you would like to see, personally, or any of your pet projects that you're kind of, pushing the staff in one direction or another and saying, this would be really cool to see done, or anything like that? Now, again, you've been on the job now for a month or 2, so maybe down the road, but any projects that you have special interest in?
Well, a few things. A theme of my time here is certainly going to be recreational access, making sure people can access their forest. And I want to be clear that it's a national forest. We are here for everybody. And I want to be inclusive of all of our visitors, the ones that live close by and the ones that come and visit us from all over, okay? Whether it's LA or Seattle or Vermont, okay? We want to be inclusive of all of our visitors. So that matters, and I'm always going to be checking with my staff to see if we're providing access to everybody. And then the other one is, I mentioned the importance of firefighting, and one of our challenges is staffing to 100%, and it's due in large part because this is an expensive area. So if I can solve or even chip away at how to make housing more accessible to frontline firefighters, I will have done my job. And that's a tough nut to crack, but I'm going to work on it.
Okay, it's good to hear. And last question, if people have concerns or questions or ideas that they would like to bring to the Forest Service, all across the forest, what is the best avenue for those individuals to try to get their questions out there and hopefully listened to and acted upon by the Forest Service?
So the best thing to do is either to contact one of our front desks at our district offices or the district ranger for each of our 5 districts. Okay, so from north to south, we have the Monterey Ranger District and Tim Short, but he's a short timer there. And then the Santa Lucia Ranger District and Tony Martinez. and then the Santa Barbara Ranger District and Daryl Hodges, the Ojai Ranger District, and that chair is vacant, but Tim Short's going to be moving into it. And then the Mount Pinos Ranger District and Karina Medina. And she's currently out on maternity leave, but she's coming back to us next month. So you can contact any one of those folks, or you can contact the front desk, and the information, the question, the concern will get to the right person.
Okay. Yeah, that's great. We try to pass on that same information as well as go to the districts, find out what district your issue is in, and then talk to the district ranger or, like I said, any of the staff related to that district. So thank you for sharing that. Well, I think that's everything, Chris. You made it through. That's all easy from here, right?
Well, I don't know. It's exciting, and it can be challenging as well. And I'm really looking forward to being here. I'm honored to have been hired into this role, and I look forward to Brian. I look forward to continuing to work with you and LPFA.
All right. What's the next trail? That's your final question. What's the next trail you're gonna be hiking on?
Well, actually, now that you mention it, since it's going to be hot next weekend, we might go hike Reyes Peak and out to Haddock Mountain.
Okay.
Thinking about pitching a tent out there at the end of the trail there.
No campfires.
No campfires, but possibly bouldering shoes. There's some great boulders out there.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, enjoy. Thanks, Chris, and we'll stay in touch.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right, everybody. Hope you enjoyed that interview with Chris Stubbs. We're hoping to do more of these. If you have any people from across the forest that have interesting stories or know history of the Los Padres Forest, we would love to have the opportunity to interview them and share their story and document it here for future generations to enjoy. If you know anybody, please email us, info@lpforest.org, or you can find us through the various social media outlets as well. So thanks for paying attention and listening. Have a great day.